Yeah, hi Varadarajan. How are you?
Doing good, Ram Prakash. How are you?
Good. So, welcome to the first podcast of the EdTech India group. As I explained to you, a couple of weeks ago, I'm really excited to have this podcast for multiple reasons, right? And uh, obviously, one, yes, we have all been interacting in the group. There have been excellent, you know, uh, different conversations, different
Mhm.
viewpoints. But I think what I also felt with 800 people in the group, which has grown in
900 now.
size. 900 now. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Right, 900 now. It is really essential that when people join in different times, they see the messages. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, I think in WhatsApp group, the messages go off, right? You really have to catch up. Number
Yes.
two, if they really want to know, okay, what is Ram about? What is Varadarajan about? What is Banu
Mm-hmm.
Pota about? What is somebody else? Then
Mm-hmm.
obviously you have a Excel sheet and all those things.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I thought a podcast will really help with details of your passion and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise,
Mm-hmm.
we will take it forward with others, hopefully, in the coming weeks. And I'm also hoping that others looking at us might take this up, in a revolving manner so that I don't have to be the host all the time, right? So
Sure.
that's what my intentions are. In the process, I'm also going to learn, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of learning for all of us, right? So with that said, and it is obvious that I need to bring you in as the first, uh, you know, uh, uh, participant, though you are the founder of the EdTech India Club. Uh, so I do welcome you. Uh,
Thank you.
so yeah, I think the agenda-wise, as I said, it's very simple. We want to, I think, viewers and us, primarily I to start with, but I'm hoping that everybody will, that they would like to know what Varadarajan is all about in the professional
Mm-hmm.
sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has been your journey, career journey?
Mm-hmm.
Um, just me, I'll just read out some of the things that you have done. You have worked for 10 years in IT services in India and as well as abroad in the US. And you were a failed edtech entrepreneur. I think definitely people people would love to learn and hear about it. You were ex-virtual, faculty of Anna University
Yes.
for MSc program, which is the
Mm-hmm.
computer science pilot. And you had a fellowship under Professor Marmar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely you can touch upon that. And your experience at Cognizant as a
Mm-hmm.
L&D head, I think that brings the exposure for all of us in terms of what is expected from a company organization perspective. Especially, I
Mm-hmm.
think you and I have spoken a lot about skilling, employability, and things like that, right?
Yes.
And I don't think we talk enough about employability,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and bridging that gap, right? So I think definitely we need to talk a little bit more about that. And your stint at NTTF, and why did you take up and go to London and do your PG, right? So is it a midlife crisis or right? So I think that will be interesting. I'm sure
I
it
hope not,
was
but yeah, sure.
right. Now I think in a different role altogether. While you are still continuing to be the guardian of a tech club, I'm sure there are others who have contributed to
Yeah.
that in the growth and also taking some of the responsibilities. love to hear you talk about that and your
Mhm.
current role as CPO at Buddy for Study,
Sure.
right? Where do you want to start?
Uh, Up to you, Ram Prakash. You're the
Right.
host. You can guide me through. But yeah, I mean, I think you're fairly covered my journey, but happy to share any inputs. But even before we start, I think this is a fantastic initiative you started. Not because you've invited me the first as the first person, but it is actually something that had been kind of in my mind for quite some time. And it's just that the way this whole thing is formed, I've sort of, all of us have sort of evolved it together, right? So each of us have taken like Shrikant, who recently ran the Agara Walk, for example, right? He took something and he took an initiative. Or somebody else like Sriram Pundi when he was, when the EdTech Club was still at Chennai EdTech Club, that's how it started. So one of the first sort of invited host meetup, he hosted our first meetup at the Hindu office. Or even the GUI team, Arun, Bala, everybody, they actually put in the efforts to. They were incubating at IITM Research Park, and they were the kind of the first team that actually created a space for us to come in person and meet. And it was the first time when we actually transformed from a fully online thing to actually have an offline meet. So there's a lot of sort of micro experiments or sort of initiatives that we have taken, and all of us have full-time jobs all through, right? So it's all about each of us trying to pick something and then whatever works for it, and see if we can give back to this community and help the community grow as a whole. And that's what you're doing right now is a fabulous effort in that sense. And I wish that this continues, as you said, like more people should come forward, more people should host and sort of very inquisitively, very curiously learn about everybody else's work and what their journeys have been, what their experiences have been. That wisdom, I think that's priceless, and that should kind of bubble out of the ecosystem. And I think that will kind of make a whole lot of difference to any new edtech entrepreneurs, right? When we see these podcasts and see these series of interactions, I wouldn't call this an interview. I think both of us are going to have probably a very candid chat, right? So this is more of us sharing our experiences, and and in the process, maybe it's of help to somebody, or in the process we also help, we also learn from each other, right? So a fabulous effort, Ram Prakash. Thanks for taking this initiative. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, thank you. I think, as you rightly pointed out, it's going to be a team effort.
Mhm.
Different at different points in time, definitely people will step in. To start off, if we can go back to your career journey, right?
Mhm.
If you can briefly touch upon your education and how you got into the first this one, and then touch upon the highlights in terms of, if you can look at your last 25, 30 years of your career,
Sure.
was it a conscious effort to, if you can touch upon how it has evolved? Was
Mhm.
it, all by design, or was it, something else? If you can touch upon that while, going through the journey, that'll be very helpful.
Sure, sure. Happy to do that. So yeah, I was born and brought up in Pondicherry. When I was young, it's a very small town, not too much of floating population the way it is today. But essentially, I went to a Christian convent. Did my schooling there. Pretty much, it was a very, I would say, I didn't have too much of an exposure as such, right? So the kind of exposure that I had, early on in my childhood, I was very clear about probably two or three things, right? One, I liked teaching, or I liked education as a domain, right? My mother was a teacher. She's a doctorate in Tamil literature.
Mm.
So I mean, I think that sort of rubbed in me all through my schooling, and that stayed with me. So right from my school days, I think I had that sort of affinity towards education as a sector, number one. But then what happened is, you go through this whole experience of the life, right? So uh, right out of schooling, I kind of wanted to get into United Nations and become a French translator. Pondicherry being a French,
Colony, right?
French township, right?
Yeah.
An ex-French township. So I wanted to become a French translator, and that sort of fascination came for two reasons, right? One, because out of all the languages, I studied, I loved. I mean, I loved the teacher that I had, French teacher, is like a fabulous human being, sort of very energetic, very positive. Very rarely, he would criticize somebody. He's always there to kind of support you. So that sort of teacher who stays on with you for a couple of grades, again creates an impact. So French as a subject sort of became very very close to me that way, right? And I did meet a colleague of my mother who worked in the UN, and that was the first time I had heard about UN.
Mm.
And UN being UN, like when you're in school, you're looking at the world and you're looking at the polarized set of differences between two parties, or differences between two nations, or differences between whatever, right? So you kind of, the whole media amplifies those differences. And then when you hear about UN for the first time, I had this fascination that here is something that is actually kind of neutral in the spirit of it. So somehow I think these three things stayed with me. Like, I wanted to do something in education. I wanted to do something something like a UN, right? Like something that is net neutral, right?
Yeah.
And French at that point was probably because that was the only thing that I understood. So it so happens, right? When you finish your 12th, your parents want you to do engineering or medicine.
Yep.
I did not take the bio group, so ended up going for engineering, and I chose to do it at BITS Pilani because I had this course for it, and I had a couple of good friends going there, and I also wanted to kind of, in a sense, run away from the house because they didn't allow me to do BA French. So sort
Right.
of my own revolt, and I went there, and that was a sort of an eye opener, right? Bits Pilani being Bits Pilani, for somebody like me who came from a not such a tier one sort of a township or city, and not with that much of exposure. Yeah. So the 4 years at Pilani basically gave me a very varied set of experiences, meeting a lot of varied set of people. And all the conversation that I used to have with my friends kind of again pushed me towards education as a domain, right? I grew, I mean, with whatever little sort of affinity that I had, it kept on increasing, and increasing. And when I graduated of Pilani, in my yearbook says that this guy will be in education, right? So everybody knew something about it. Like probably I didn't know as much. So um, I took the first job that I got in campus, went into Infosys, and it so happened that within Infosys, right, you have the day job, and then you do some stretch responsibilities, or you do some, out of office work. It so happened that I'll wait for my day job to get completed and just want to rush and do the other things because that's all going to be about education or teaching. Like I was a technical trainer for the Infosys training division, and very, very, very good reviews from trainees. And I went on to become the Campus Connect ambassador. You still there?
Yeah. Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, and I did, sort of nurture that in a way, not so consciously. It was just more of, my work sort of gave me survivability and sustenance, and what I did outside of work kind of gave me purpose, right? So it kept going that way. And I ended up going to the US, spending about 7 years in the US. I came back to India in 2011, and that was merely to take a break. And as luck would have it, the US government refused to give me an H1B stamping, and I couldn't go back.
I see.
So, right. So it was it's sort of the choice was made for me to stay back, and I'm so grateful it happened that way because I think otherwise I wouldn't have discovered myself what happened, in the next part of my career. So at that time, I had a classmate of mine who knew very well that I was very passionate about education.
Mm.
He was a tech guy, and he basically wanted somebody to come and shape up the product that he's building in the edtech space. And I think that was my first formal entry into edtech. In 2011, I joined a startup called TechBox, and I was based
So
out of
is this
Coimbatore.
the entrepreneurship stint?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
So at that time, again, I was very clear. I wanted to do something in education because I had built 10 years of experience in tech services. It was natural for me to start kind of offering what I had. So naturally, I ended up in edtech. So that journey started, and there's a lot of passion and all that. But we had our angel investor. We set up our office in Coimbatore. We tried to build a product, and I think for the first time, I had to go and hire a team.
Hmm.
Okay, and when I did that, that is when probably the next sort of clarity emerged. We did a lot of interviews, we hired people, and then I realized that there is a lot of intent for the people that we hired, that they want to learn and they want to contribute, but they did not have the skills. And in these were students who are coming from tier 2, tier 3 rural areas, from a not so high ranked college in Coimbatore, and we couldn't afford that sort of a fees for going, sorry, that sort of a salary, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So we started hiring, and what we realized is we spent about 8 to 10 months actually training them and skilling them, and actually spending a lot of the energy and resources that we had in shaping them up in order to get a product ready, right?
Right.
I think we were working on forking a version of Android, trying to build a custom Android version for education.
Hmm.
From the ground up, it will be an education OS, and we thought we'll have a curation engine, content recommendation engine, content creation engine, everything on a tab, and we sourced a tab from China with a partner.
Hmm.
So we wanted to. I mean, there's a lot of big dreams, right? And
And
none
it
of
was
my
all
company.
bootstrapped.
No, we had an angel investor.
Okay. Yeah, you
We
did
had an
mention.
angel.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but the thing is, like, because I wouldn't say we hired wrong. We probably made a lot of rookie mistakes, and we were able to hire the best talent within the constraints that we had,
Hmm.
and that best talent was actually, there's a lot of gap. I
Yeah.
think that was the first time in my purpose sort of evolved to saying, what do I want to solve for in education? In Infosys, I had been a technical trainer. I knew I wanted to be in education. I knew I wanted to do something in EdTech. And I think at that time, the first clarity emerged that I want to be solve for that employability,
Hmm.
right? How do I make sure that graduate learners from undergraduate or from postgrad, from higher education essentially, how do they make sure that they are really employable and productive from day one in their work, right? So that was not my core job, but that sort of emerged as a purpose.
Right.
And eventually, we did a lot of rookie mistakes, and the startup kind of had to be shut down. We did have customers, but it was too. We became a more of a hardware provider, and then since we had to source the tabs, and there was a lot of capex and all that, so we did a lot of rookie mistakes that way. And we are talking about 2011, 12, and internet the way it is today, it was not there.
Correct.
The data was not that cheap, or so all sort of systemic things, and the mistakes that we made kind of compounded. So
Was
we
it
shut down.
for higher education? Was it for K-12, or was it for, yeah?
So as naive as we were, we wanted to actually do it for K-12,
I see. Hmm.
right? And we realized that K-12 in India, that we went and spoke to a few schools, we did a lot of road shows, we explained to parents, we talked to quite a few principals, we did a lot. And the more and more we did it, it became very clear that K-12 is not the market for us, especially, and we were not even looking at it. And this was probably I don't know, if I go about the journey again, I might not even target India to be the first market. We were very naive in saying that, not naive, I'd say patriotic probably, and say that, I want to focus only on India because we want to improve the education system
Correct.
in India, right? And looking back, there's a lot of learnings, and around that time, I think I forgot his name. I think Murli or somebody from Your Story.
Mm-hmm.
He had made a call to in Facebook or something, asking for EdTech entrepreneurs who had any failures to share with in Your Story. It was the early days of Your Story, I think, right, 2013. So I did share my learnings onto Your Story, and one of the things in Your Story, one of the questions he had asked was, where do you see this going, and what are some of the areas that we should sort of look at? And at that time, I was fascinated by FDI as the policy mechanism. We have seen it in other sectors. Why is it not happening in India, right? Not that I'm a fan of it should happen or shouldn't happen, but it seems to have certain effect in the ecosystem when it happens, in whichever ecosystem it happens, right? And I thought maybe it's one of the factors that's not one of those one of those change agents that's missing in the education space. And when I was reading about it, I read about Professor Sudhanshu Bhushan's policy paper. Professor Sudhanshu Bhushan was heading the higher education department in NEPA, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration. So he had written about FDI in education. This was back in 2012, right? I think that even before that, there have been debates in NEPA. NEPA at that time was the anchor body for your educational 5-year planning. We used to have that as a process before, right?
I see.
So it so happened that I wrote about it in this interview, and Professor Sudharshan Bhushan actually came as an external examiner for one of my mother's colleague students in Pondicherry
I see.
for their PhD, right? So I mean, my mother's friend was actually that was his first PhD student. So he was so proud. He was a first time graduate from his village. So for him to have elevated to that level and then be a guide to another student, he was super excited. So he invited his colleagues, and I saw his invitation card in my dining table at home, and I said, "No, shall I go for it?" And my mother said, "Go ahead." So I went there. I met Professor Sudhanshu. I told him about the reading his work and all that. And he basically, at that time I was out of work. He basically said, like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." So pack your bags and come to Delhi. So I went off to Delhi. So uh, in Delhi, he introduced me to Professor Marwa Mukhopadhyay, who was the former chairman of NEPA. I mean, NEPA was at some point also a national university, and he was also the founder chairman of NOS, National Open Schooling. Now it's National Institute of Open Schooling.
Right.
So Professor Marmar, in all respects, I think he's my guru in terms of opening my eyes to realize that you're trying to solve a people problem with an engineering mindset, right?
Right.
If you give an engineer a problem saying, "Hey, here is a shirt that's dirty, go design a machine for it," they'll problem solve for it, right? And I was doing a similar trial and error problem solving to solve for some things in education, but I did not have the people perspective at all, the psychological aspect of it, the learning science aspect of it, how everything works, with every human being, right? They are not robots. So a lot of that discussion sort of seeded my next sort of clarity that I need to, at some point in life, get formally, tutored on the science of learning, and so it was all there. Like, I have to do something about it. And I got a chance probably until I came to, got a chance that got out of Microsoft and had time to go to UCL and pursue that dream. But after about 9 months of my fellowship with Professor Mukhopadhyay, I went to, I came back and I got a chance to work at Cognizant. That was sort of a defining moment in the sense, I knew I wanted to be in education. I knew I wanted to work within education. I wanted to work in EdTech, and I knew I wanted to solve for employability. Mativanan, Mr. Mativanan, who basically was the head of, one of the areas of training, and Hariraj Kumar, who's also there in our group, the ex CLO, Chief Learning Officer of Cognizant. So they were so kind enough that they listened to my story and they said, "Come on board and we'll give you sort of." It was almost like an entrepreneurship stint. They gave me a fully empowered sort of a blank canvas and said that you go solve for the problem of unemployability, right? So it was a phenomenal experience that I had in Cognizant. Working with the freshers, 25,000 people a year that get offered. And the problem statement was very simple. How do you cut down 3 weeks of training? 3 weeks of training, cutting down 3 weeks of training is actually, it's huge. And probably that experience actually started putting some numbers for me, right? We talk about employability, but what is the cost of unemployability, right? So, there are 18 weeks, somebody's on bench, somebody's on training and bench. And that 18 weeks, that person, there's an X amount of money that a company spends in training, in their CTCs, in their overall, headcount costs and all that, right? Facility
And they are
costs.
not productive for those 18 weeks, right? So, correct.
Right. They're not earning a single penny,
correct.
right? And one thing is the cost that is actually put on, invested on that resource. The second thing is, if they were productive from day one, they would have earned a minimum of $10 per hour, right? And if you compute that, per person, you're talking about an opportunity loss or a leakage, revenue leakage of about $18,000 or $15,000. And you multiply that by 20,000 people, just for Cognizant for 1 year. And then for 20 years that they have been recruiting like that. And then you multiply it again by 10 because there are 10 other companies who do the similar recruitment. That was like a few $1 billion that was not getting into our economy.
And you're talking about one company, and then you talk about Infosys, Wipro, right? All that.
Yeah, exactly. it's about $15,000. That's inclusive of costs, investment made in terms of training and bench time, CTCs and everything, and the loss of revenue because of that bench time, right? That's about $15,000 per person. And if you multiply that by just for one company, it's 20,000 people per year, and then multiplied by the last 20 years that they've been doing a similar process, and then multiplied by 10 companies that are doing it, right? Number becomes pretty huge, and that actually shook me, right? And I started looking at why this was happening this way. And eventually, what happened was at Cognizant, I evolved. I tried to kind of again. This time, I was not doing pure trial and error because I had some foundational inputs from Professor Marmar Mukhopadhyay, and I kind of understood how to look at adult psychology, adult learning psychology, and then a little bit of self-learning, self-regulated learning, and all that. So I kind of was looking for what is the core purpose or core root cause, I would say, right, of what was causing this. And two things clearly emerged. One was most managers that I talked to, they were very clear that it's not about whether they didn't know Java or full stack. It was not that, right? It was more about that self-regulation, self-driven sort of a learning, self-accountability. It is more of, and I kind of jokingly say this, and I talk to a lot of graduates. See, when you compute the total number of hours you are living, from age 20 to age 60, that's the time when you typically also work.
Yeah, professional
right?
experience. Yeah.
Professional experience. You start your first job at age 20,
Yeah.
retire probably by age 60. 40 years. If you compute the total number of hours, about 20% of those total hours goes for sleeping and blah, blah, right? And then another 20% will go for all personal chores. All that. So 40% is so not 20%, probably 15%. 5% is what you have for your family and friends. The remaining 60% you actually end up spending at work, whether you do it for an employer, whether you do it for yourself, whatever it is, right? So I'm not prophesizing saying that you have to work this many hours or don't work this many hours. I'm not getting to that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that this is how typically the math works out. And if you look at the sort of inherent contradiction, right, that we have enabled in the undergraduate education, for the 5% of time, most of these youngsters, they have this fascination of romanticizing. All the movies and everything is giving you this romanticizing effect of about getting in, falling in love, finding a soulmate, finding the real true partner for your life and all that. And that you're going to spend 5% of your time with them. Right. Whereas 60% of the time you're going to be spending with your employer or with your work and with your professional career, but you don't want to fall in love. You don't want to find your soulmate. You're not even trying, but you want an arranged marriage for it. I'm not saying anything wrong about arranged marriage. I'm just saying there's an inherent contradiction, right? So this contradiction basically means that we have somehow enabled an ecosystem which takes the largest piece of our professional life and basically makes it very, very external locus of control. Like somebody will help me get a job, something will happen for me, somebody will give me a promotion, somebody will give me a raise. It's never about internal locus of control. I need to get a job, I need to make myself better. So somewhere the system basically was set up for an external locus of control, right? And it was facilitating it very actively. We are even celebrating it. We're putting banners and posters about who we placed. I mean, what are you celebrating?
Right.
You're celebrating that after 16 years of formal education, you still had to place them.
Yeah.
They couldn't find a job on their own, right? So that sort of hurt me.
No, sorry to interrupt. I think you touched upon a very good point, which I didn't, frankly, I didn't look at it from that perspective, though we all know about the problem. The interesting question here is, based on what you said, is only India looking at this? Is it only prevalent in India, or is it even in other countries? If you can, since you have had exposure to, right? So
placement, the way it happens only in India.
Right.
Every other country has job fairs, career fairs. See, in India, you see, the person who's actually getting the job on campus, they're not even really aware of what are the roles and responsibilities. What will my day-to-day look like?
Yeah.
That internal locus is missing, right? I mean, I need to know what I should be doing from day one. I need to know what should be my deliverables. I need to know who I should report to. What will be my parameters for success? How will I be measured for success? I need to know that, right? I mean, that was how even your educational system choices were made. Like you chose a particular degree because of that, you chose a particular school because of that. You ask questions, but here you're not asking questions, right? If you look at any other country, it is the onus of the student to find
Right,
that
right.
the job that fits them and find that information about the job, what the day to day will look like, and all that. So, I mean, pretty much how lateral entry hiring works is how even most of the entry level hiring would work. I mean, there might be some apprenticeship programs and internship programs where the filtering or the screening criteria might be slightly lower,
Right.
but eventually it, it's not fundamentally different from the fundamentals are the same. Your job requires you to do so much. You have this. Are you fitting?
Right.
If you fit that, you have the job, and you get paid for what you deliver as a service, right? So that equation was somewhere like we were not bartering skills and competencies to get paid. We were bartering the promise of they will acquire the skill and competency. That somehow we've lost that
In
fundamental
fact,
shift.
a couple of days ago, one of my ex-emphasis colleague, he and I have been talking a lot about education and all those things, and he's an IIT IIM guy, right? But he says, I don't think I have learned anything at IIT or IIM. I have learned a lot of things outside of it, right? And to relate it to what you are just explaining, right? He was also of the viewpoint that is just a filtration system that we have built,
Absolutely.
right? I think a lot of people acknowledge that today than it was before. And even going
Yep.
back to where I used to work at Emphasis, we all were in the same. And even today, I think the needle hasn't changed in terms of going to colleges. Okay, the systems and the processes might have changed. The time to actually recruit might have changed or become shorter. AI might have brought this, but still there is a skill gap that we are talking about,
Right.
right? In percentage term, it has not moved that much.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting
Yeah.
to see the perspective that you bring in terms of saying, okay, India is probably the only country who is looking at it from this perspective
Yeah.
to say, okay, there's already some jobs. Okay, people are asking you to come and fill those positions. And from a student or a candidate perspective, they are not looking at, okay, what is the role, position, what are the responsibilities, would I fit in, what do I need to do to, really excel in that, right?